Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to welcome you to YW Boston's 26th Academy of Women Achievers celebration. I am Bea Jimenez, and I'm joined here today with my co-host, Anis Gill Miller, and we are the co-chairs of this year's AWA Host Committee. We are so delighted to be here today, so we hope that each of you are tuning in, feeling safe and healthy. I joined the committee last year after engaging with YW Boston and their advocacy committee and joining the board of directors this past fall. I love working with YW Boston, especially because they're an organization that is working to break down racial and gender barriers. As I think about the fact that today we are celebrating and thinking about all the strong women who uplift our communities, even after 1 year after the murder of George Floyd, our communities continue to grieve. That is why the mission of YW Boston remains to be so important today. We must work together to advance anti-racist strategies and envision a new Boston, one that works for everyone. For those who are new to YW Boston and our work, I hope that as you tune into the event today, you learn more and you are inspired to get involved, just like we have today. These are important issues, and YW Boston is an organization that deserves your support. I'll hand it over to Anis to continue.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bea. And I couldn't agree with you more. Year after year, I am so appreciative of how YW Boston remains a leader for advancing equity and building inclusive spaces. And I have had the absolute honor of being the co-chair on the host committee for this event for the past 3 years. And what resonates with me the most is to witness the bold and blazing trail approach or attitude that YW Boston uses to tackle issues of diversity and inclusion. It is absolutely amazing. In fact, for over 155 years, YW has been at the forefront in discussions and activism on issues regarding diversity and inclusion. And I know YW will continue this work, which makes it, again, an honor to be a part of and support YW Boston as they continue to provide the tools and the platform to do the important work to tackle the issues around diversity and inclusion. I also want to thank all of you for being here today and supporting the work of YW Boston. We are looking forward to celebrating some unstoppable and inspirational Boston women. While we wish we all were able to celebrate this 26th class of Academy of Women Achievers together in person, we are still very excited to virtually honor these amazing honorees, and the essential work of YW Boston. It is so incredibly powerful. We are grateful to be here today with you, standing up for racial and gender equality. But before we get started, we'd like to take a moment to thank all those who served with Bea and I on the host committee to help bring this wonderful event together. Many thanks to Marla Baskerville, Ron Bell. Many thanks to Sakia Epstein, Deborah Fries. Thank you, Patricia Hennessy, Nakia Hill, David Jones, Christine Letts, and Jessica Ripton. And of course, we would not be here today without the hard work of the amazing YW staff. Thank you again. Bear has some other things to talk to us about today.
Thank you so much, Anis. I am so excited to get this event started, but of course, we still have a few things that we got to share with you all. And you might remember that we had some YW Boston masks if you joined us last year. Anis is holding hers up. And of course, you can continue to support YW Boston by purchasing these masks from the artist Sarah Bertocci. You can find the YW Boston mask on her website, and a percentage of each sale will be donated to YW Boston. So one of the many ways that you can show your support today. I also want to mention to those who are joining us via our virtual platform, Remo, you can find a QR code where you, if you are inspired to financially support YW Boston's vital work today, can use the phone number at the bottom right of the floor plan, and you can text a donation to help YW Boston fulfill its mission to eliminate racism and empower women today. And of course, I know all of you are following us on social media. You will find a YW Boston social media account and hashtag at YW Boston, hashtag AWA 2021 on each of the table floors on the virtual platform. Hashtag us, join us online, make your donation today, and help us support this incredible mission. Now, let's get things started. In honor of our 26th anniversary, we will now hear from YW Boston's President and CEO, Beth Chandler.
Thank you, Anis and Bea, for your introduction and for the work that you've done with the host committee to put this wonderful event together. Hello, everyone. I'm Beth Chandler, President and CEO of YW Boston, and I am thrilled to welcome all of you to the 2016 Academy of Women Achievers celebration. This is our second virtual AWA as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And while I miss seeing you all in person, I am continually amazed and grateful to see all of the energy our audience brings to our virtual events. And while we're here today to celebrate, today's also a bittersweet day because it marks the anniversary of George Floyd's death. So I ask you to take a moment of silence with me to remember George Floyd and all those who were murdered at the hands of police. Thank you. I want to extend special thanks to our gold sponsors, Arbella Insurance Group, Eastern Bank Foundation, Eaton Vance Management, Lindauer, Northland Investment Corporation, PNC Bank, TJX Companies, as well as our silver sponsors, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, Boston Impact Initiative, Fletcher Consulting, Foley Hoag LLP, Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship, Massport, National Grid, North Star Asset Management Incorporated, and the Rockland Trust Blue Hills Charitable Foundation. We are incredibly grateful to those whose support allows us to work towards our mission of eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. I also want to thank Eastern Bank for generously providing a space for us to broadcast today's event. Before we begin, I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that YW Boston's headquarters, as well as many of our staff, reside on the traditional land of the Massachusetts people, past and present. I recognize this fact to pay respect to the people who stewarded this land and to remind all of us here today to be intentional about the use of native lands. As the first YWCA in the nation, YW Boston has been at the forefront of advancing equity for over 155 years. Through our diversity, equity, and inclusion services, Inclusion Boston and Lead Boston, as well as our advocacy work and FIRE initiative, we help individuals and organizations change policies, practices, behaviors, and attitudes with a goal of creating more inclusive environments. During the current pandemic, we have been helping organizations strengthen social connections to prioritize DE&I in the virtual space, as well as in their reopening plans to ensure more equitable outcomes moving forward. Last year at the 25th Academy of Women Achievers celebration, I spoke about the importance of coming together to honor women. At that point, we were learning about the massive number of women who in the United States, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, downshifted their careers or left the workforce entirely, which particularly impacted Black and Latinx women. In fact, this past January, women's labor participation rate fell 55.8%. So it fell to 55.8%, which is the lowest since 1987. To counteract that, I shared, is my strong belief in creating spaces to champion women leaders. Now, with the majority of Massachusetts residents vaccinated or soon to be, while continuing to create spaces to champion women leaders, we also need to redouble our efforts to create structural change to support all women long after the pandemic. I recently heard a Greek word, kainos. Kainos refers to a newness that is superior to what came before, because what came before is now obsolete. When I think about what lays ahead for Boston and the Boston community, I keep coming back to this term. The pandemic has laid bare the fact that our oldest ways of existing and working together cannot sustain us. We have to embrace right now as a moment of change, welcoming Kainos. YW Boston has been honoring women with the Academy of Women Achievers event for 26 years. We know there is no dearth of unstoppable women in Greater Boston, and we are continually inspired by the women we honor. However, we are not seeing leadership demographics shift in Boston as we wish they were. Women, especially women of color, are significantly underrepresented in C-suites and boardrooms. And too often, I hear people blaming women for these inequities, criticizing women for leaving their careers or not re-entering the workforce quickly enough to satisfy the job market, questioning women who choose not to have children or who delay having children. Often these arguments leave out the fact that women's uncertainty about the future is not happenstance. It is the result of systemic inequities that present women with a narrow set of inadequate options. As a working mom, my personal and professional lives don't have clear-cut hours, same as most other working moms. I hope that we can leave behind the rigidity of the pre-pandemic workplace and instead recognize that supporting caregivers, who are most often women, requires flexibility and proactive organizational support. We can create a world where workplaces value caregivers, which will undoubtedly lead to a more equitable balance in leadership. I wholeheartedly believe it is the duty of everyone listening today, people of all genders, to support women's careers. So I encourage you to start conversations in your workplace about what you have learned over the past year and how to center equity in your reopening plans. If you're looking for a place to start, reach out to our Inclusion Boston team at YW Boston to learn more about our gender dialogues and our race dialogues. We need to continue holding spaces like this, spaces that encourage us to recognize that we all have a part to play in acknowledging and supporting women leaders. I hope you took the time to watch the amazing videos of our awardees as you waited for the program to begin. We have an outstanding group of awardees being inducted today into the Academy of Women Achievers. Betty Francisco, CEO of the Boston Impact Initiative and co-founder of Amplify Latinx. Karen Holmes Ward, Cityline host and the Director of Public Affairs and Community Service at WCVB Channel 5. Representative Liz Miranda, State Representative for the 5th Suffolk District. Deb Taft, Chief Executive Officer at Lindauer. And Dr. Altaf Saadi, Instructor of Neurology at Harvard Medical School, General Academic Neurologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, and Associate Director of the MGH Asylum Clinic. Dr. Saadi is our 4th annual Sylvia Farrell Jones recipient. Each of these women come from different backgrounds and are in distinct sectors, but one thing holds true for each: they are unstoppable women who, in their positions and power, work to create a more equitable and inclusive Boston for all. Thank you again for joining us to celebrate them today. Now, before we continue with our program, I have 2 asks. First, help us make this the best virtual event and the most talked about virtual event for the next 2 hours by tweeting when you hear something that inspires you or something that you want to shout out at the hashtag AWA2021 and post on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and any other site that you use. Let's bring more people into this celebration. And second, we need your support to continue working towards our mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. Our goal is to raise $26,000 from individuals during this event. So far, thanks to the generosity of those who have donated when registering to attend, we have raised some, but we're not there yet. Take a moment during today's program to make a contribution to YW Boston and help us meet our goal of $26,000. Our QR code at the bottom right corner of your screen will take you directly to our donate page, or you can text AWA to 617-652-5008 to make a gift from your phone. As an incentive to both give and to post on social media, we are giving away a number of prizes ranging from a face mask and some YW stickers to being entered into a chance to have dinner with me. You can learn more about these giveaways in the chat. We will keep you updated on our progress throughout the event. Thank you for supporting our work to create a more inclusive and equitable Boston. Now, please welcome LaToya Edwards, Emmy Award-winning anchor at NBC 10 Boston and NECN, our MC today.
Hello, Beth. How are you? I adore you so much. I miss the fact that we're not there in person, because if anybody who has attended the event in the past, you know that Beth and I are both glamazons. We're both about 6 foot, and when we get a chance to hug each other and to have that sisterhood, there's nothing like it. Beth, your comments inspired me. They touch my soul. That's why you're the leader of the YW Boston, because you speak with such genuine caring for all people, especially people of color, people who are disenfranchised, and you get to the heart of the matter. So thank you for your comments. And also I want to give a big shout out to Bea and Anis, our co-chairs for the event, for bringing the energy and getting us excited. So my job as the MC is to get I'll be your conductor of sorts as I move through this event today. And we have a phenomenal panel of awardees. Happy AWA Day, everybody, because this is a special day right now for so many reasons, as we know, marking the death of George Floyd, and we're going to really celebrate his memory throughout the day. His essence is with us. I'd like to welcome you again to this 26th Annual Academy of Women Achievers Celebration, and congrats to this year's awardees. You are a special group of people. We love you. We celebrate you. We'll get to our conversation in a moment. I want to invite everybody to join into the conversation. When you have questions, when you hear this conversation, touch on something that you want to speak about, please put it in the chat, and we're going to get to some of them at the end of the conversation. Okay. So this is my 6th year being the host. I have been pregnant at the event. I have had my baby in a stroller at the event. I won't miss this event because it's so important to the city of Boston, to the movement. And we have to, right now, celebrate the work they do every day as a news anchor for NBC 10 Boston from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning, right before the Today Show. I personally deal with and cover issues like race, gender, so much more. And YW Boston continues to address these issues, which is why this organization means so much to me. And I know it means so much to you because you're taking the time to be here. So before we kick off today's panel, I want to thank all of you again for joining YW today and supporting the important work. And we're looking at the numbers. We know that they will continue to grow, but $26,000, that is achievable in this next time that we're together. Please, there are certain organizations that you dig a little deeper into your pocket for. This is one of those organizations to continue the important work. We want to hear from some of Boston's boldest and bravest and most influential women. And we do that, but I also want you to know that we want you to help out and look at the QR code and give as you can and get some prizes. And of course, put out the hashtag on social media and let everybody know that you're participating in this amazing luncheon of the Academy of Women Achievers, the 26th annual one. So, okay, let's kick off the conversation right now, and let's talk about the issues that matter to us. I was at a table 1, and I had some phenomenal women talking about children, talking about making it work during this pandemic. So let's bring in my team of amazing awardees right now. Let's bring back Representative Liz Miranda for State Representative. Let's welcome back City Line host Karen Holmes Ward from WCVB, as well as Director of Public Affairs. Let's welcome back neurology leader Dr. Altaf Saadi. Welcome back. We want to include you in this conversation. Let's welcome back Lindauer CEO Deb Taft. Deb, great to see you. Let's welcome back CEO, attorney Betty Francisco. Great to see you as well. So let's open up to our sisters who are watching right now and our allies as well who are listening to this conversation. Let's make it as open, direct, honest, and really bring the sisterhood, because I don't know about you at home. I have missed connection. That's what this pandemic has sort of hurt us a little bit. And I don't know, when I see amazing people like you, I want to just learn nuggets, little gems. So, okay, I have some questions and you give us all the gems. Liz, I see your smile bright, so we'll go to you first, but everybody gets to touch on this. We've seen the impact COVID-19 has had on women's careers. What can institutions do to better support women, especially women of color, as we move forward from COVID-19?
Thank you so much. It's such an honor. I just want to say to my fellow honorees, just want to give you guys a warm hug. It's just for me, I've been a legislator for 30 months and I have been a Roxbury girl for 40 years. And so it's been such a great experience to be in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. I think there's a bunch of things. There is no recovery or an equitable recovery unless we're paying attention to women, to our families, and to communities that are most vulnerable. I know that I have been working on the ground since March 2020 to create a more inclusive Commonwealth, to make sure we gave people the cash assistance they needed to survive, invested in food insecurity, invested in legal representation as people fought to keep their homes or dealing with immigration issues. I think there's a couple of things we can do. Create better environments, pay women what they're worth and what they deserve. Address childcare issues. In my district, 62% of the households are female run. And so if they're female run and they've lost their job or are underpaid, can you imagine going through multiple pandemics and a racial reckoning this country hasn't seen at the same time without the supports you needed while you're raising your children at home? And so we have a lot of work to do, but childcare is a major issue. And we have to think differently. We can't go back to normal. And I think that's the most important thing that COVID taught us, was that we can't go back to a Commonwealth or a country that doesn't value the women in our communities, because when you invest in women, you invest in our entire community. So those are some ways that I feel that we can help.
You know, Liz, and I'm going to do stuff differently, because I know in a panel that you should go 1, 2, 3, just go around. But I'm gonna hold up my mom's picture, because I lost her in February. She had COVID. And I know that you I remember doing a story about how your family members. Yeah, who's that right there?
My grandmother.
Yeah, and let's not cry, but it's tough because people don't get.
It's okay to cry.
No, I'm gonna cry. I'm a baby. Okay. But people don't get the cost of this pandemic. And it costs you in your family, it costs you in your workplace. Beth talked about how women are dropping out of the workforce. So it's one thing to say pay them what they're worth, but it's another thing to create policies, real policies. I mean, how do you bounce back from losing a family member and going back into the State House and arguing from a place of, it's personal, the loss is real. Your family, you got sick at a funeral for your family member. So let's just dig into that and let's just pull out all the stops and just get real.
One, I want to thank you for being vulnerable, because we have to do more of that. I personally, over this last year, have realized that the strong Black woman syndrome that I have been forced, this shield that I've been forced to wear my entire life, was actually killing me. So I lost my beloved grandmother in April of 2020. She had 2 false negatives, but actually did have COVID and passed away at 84 in 5 days. And she raised me. My mom was a teen mom. And so my grandmother and her sisters raised us in Roxbury, not speaking English, but speaking Cape Verdean Creole. And so my title did not shield me from getting COVID, because we already knew that communities like Roxbury, where people are dying 30 years ahead of their brothers and sisters who live in the Back Bay because of the social determinants of health, because of environmental injustice, because of economic injustice, we already knew what our communities were faced with. And so we saw not only a disproportionate number of people in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Chelsea. I could go through all the majority minority districts in the Commonwealth, and they had higher rates of COVID, but we didn't get the testing first. We didn't get the information first. And I've been fighting for vaccine equity. We didn't get the vaccines first. And so we have to remember that there are communities that when we're talking about issues of transparency or accountability, that are just trying to survive. And for many of our communities, COVID presented an opportunity for the rest of the Commonwealth, the communities that are not faced with the same injustices we are faced with, to understand that it is not equal and it has been separate for a very long time. So thank you for bringing her and your mother into this space, because this is a life or death issue. When we talk about equity and justice, it's not just about saying Black Lives Matter and getting a stamp of approval because you wrote a good statement or hired a DEI consultant. This is about really making the world a better place by investment and helping people survive and thrive. So thank you for sharing her story. And mi abuela, my mama, you know, it's been hard. I can't say that it's been easy. And I just want to say thank you to many of the people on this call. Thank you to Beth Chandler. Thank you to you and the honorees, because women like that really inspired me to not let grief paralyze me, but instead to let my grief propel me to write the type of legislation that would push Massachusetts forward. So thanks.
Woo, Liz, we started off with tears. I want to bring in Deb for a moment, because we talked a little bit about the struggle for women in workplace and in this era, this COVID era. Yeah. I mean, I know you lead a firm where it looks at diverse talent, but how didn't you, number one, convince women that it's still worth it to compete? And how do you make everybody else buy into the fact that there's so much value in our perspective and being in the room?
Well, I want to go to the workplace. Look at President Lynn Wooten, new president of Simmons, who wrote this amazing op-ed this week on what's happened with women in the workforce. And the truth is, $800 billion women lost in this workplace. 1 out of every 4 women is considering leaving the workforce. Staggering statistics. And in fact, I'm hearing leaders, and so I'm calling forward all the leaders in the room, think that we're going to go back to the way it was in terms of workplaces, right? That this whole virtual thing was a fluke, was a COVID fluke. And we know it works. We know people can function this way. We know we can function in what's called sort of asynchronous ways, right? You and I, LaToya, can be on different schedules. Betty and I can be on different schedules, and we can still figure this out, how to get great work done. But we've got to put women's flexible workforce structure, and we've been sort of pushing that away for years. We know it works. Last year proved it. So let's figure out and listen to women who, changed their work approaches and were able to be just as productive. We have to lose this idea that people have to be in the same space and be seen in the old ways to be productive in the workplace. And the other thing is obviously equity. Every one of us should be replacing ourselves with leaders of color, making sure diverse leaders of diverse lived experiences. We've got to make sure that leaders who are making decisions are at the table. There are too many people who look like me making decisions that shouldn't be made by people who look like me.
And thank you for saying that, Deb. We appreciate that. Betty, I see you shaking your head as well. You want to jump in here? You have 22 years experience doing this specific type of work.
Sure, yeah. I think and by the way, congrats to all honorees. This is one of my favorite events of the year. And I was on the board of YW at some time ago, and never saw myself as an AWA recipient. So thank you, Beth, and to the YW. So yes, I this is something that I've seen so many times where, we've got this focus right now. There's this movement, right? We're calling it of around equity and inclusion, but can we sustain this, right? Can we put intentional focus and investment in both, closing the racial wealth gap, closing the gender wealth gap, supporting women in ways that we've never seen before. And it's going to take, both employers, right, to do things differently, but to change practices, actions, so that women are put at the forefront, and women of color in particular, who have often been left out of not just decision making and representation, right, but just don't ever get to even have a say, right? They don't weigh in on policies and practices. And this is something that I'm in my current role at Boston Impact Initiative, and I just started last week. But prior to that, I was at Compass Working Capital, which, focused on supporting women with low incomes, predominantly women, to build savings and financial sustainability. And one of the, the things we started to integrate much more frequently was not just hearing from our clients, hearing their voices, listening to what they wanted, but also listening to what our own employees needed. And last year, in particular, right after, George Floyd, we started hosting these town hall meetings, and I've never felt the ability to be vulnerable in a space. I've never cried in public. And this was the first time I was finally in a place in a company where I could be myself. I literally could share the experience of feeling fear, right? Fear for my family. My husband is Black, right? My kids are brown. I'm half Asian. So all of the weight and trauma from what was happening, but also the personal fears of, can I go out, right, and be safe? Can my husband go out and be safe? Was all weighing in, and I could not stop crying. And part of, what we can create in our workplaces and in other spaces are places to grieve, to be vulnerable, to share those fears, and then find a pathway forward, and then figure out how to support women, right? What do they need in this moment, right? Do they need, childcare support? Do they need additional income? Let's talk about, paid leave practices that actually help uplift them. And, I'm all about creating, that pathway for generational wealth, getting out of poverty. I did that, in my own family, but we need many, many, many more Bettys, right, that can get out of their situation and create generational wealth for their kids.
You talked about Betty, you talked about needing many, many more Bettys. I mean, we need many, many more. Is everybody represented right here? Dr. Saadi, we need many, many. When I think of neurology, I think of my 14-year-old daughter who's into science and math right now. And I'm like, I think I must have stolen you from the hospital, mix up in the hospital, because you couldn't have come from me if you like those topics, but it's great that she excels in them as an honor student. And so I wish she could see you, because it's exciting to see you, but it may be lonely for you, because when you walk in the room, people don't look like you. Number one, how do you feel comfortable in your own skin? How do you make everybody hear you? How do you make everybody see you and be comfortable with you, or do you just not care? I mean, let's just be, again, the real is the word of the day.
I think it's hard to say that I don't care. I think this affects all of us. When you were saying that, I remember walking into a patient's room even, and he asked, "Are you Muslim?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "What, are you going to shoot me?" I can list off examples after examples of what it has been like to feel like being in a space where you're an only, but at the same time, there are so many stories of people expressing so much gratitude for your presence. At the same time I think about that story, I think about someone rushing into an elevator when I was in the hospital, and they were trying to make small talk, and I was just really not in the mood because it had been a long day after work. But I was just like, okay, chatting, and she just said, "Look, you're not our doctor, but my father has been seeing you just walk past to other patients' room, and just seeing you has made us so happy that there are doctors that that look like us, that can represent us." And I wasn't even taking care of this patient. And I know that stories like that are stories that are shared by my other, friends of color, women of color who are filling these spaces. And I think we have to be what we didn't see growing up, and I think that, I have to. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is, because I need to also call out my own sense of vulnerability right now, is because I feel so woefully less amazing than all the other women on this panel. So I just needed to say it out loud because I'm just so in awe of everyone here. But I do think that a big part of it is when we do talk about our insecurities and vulnerabilities and we voice it, and that's something that I'm trying to sort of do more and more often, I do think it makes us feel less alone and makes us feel that, you know, our hopes and fears aren't unique and that we can lean on other women for support. And so I just also just wanted to say how it was lovely to see you and then Liz just sort of modeling that. And it's something that I'm really trying to take to heart in terms of viewing vulnerability as a strength and something that I'm trying to embody. And I do think sort of talking about these difficult experiences that I've had as a physician, as a researcher, and calling out when there are difficult experiences does open up and, you know, make other people more comfortable because they can feel less alone as well.
Yeah. You know, I think I have to go to my sister in broadcasting, Karen. So many things to talk about with you. The fact that you were doing it at such a level and have been excellent for so many years at WCVB. I just want, when George Floyd's death hit in the broadcast world, the stress on your shoulders, I can only imagine. And so people have to recognize that because it's airing, it's looping. We are supposed to, for so many years, not have an emotion about it. You host a show that brings in the community perspective, but you are also a woman, a Black woman. And when it hit you, I'm sure it had a reaction on many levels. And so how'd you handle that? And then it's the anniversary, the 1 year anniversary today. I mean, I don't know. There's so many reasons why I'm actually weepy. I just want to get your take on how you manage that, how you handle the conversation for people who did not look like you, because I'm sure they all came to you for answers like, tell me more. How am I supposed to be? How can I learn? How can I be different?
Wow, Latoya, you kind of said it all. And I'm going to answer your question, but I do first want to say that I am honored to be in this group of women today. And thank you to YW Boston for picking me to be a part of the 2021 class of Women Achievers. The very first board I served on was in Roxbury at the Oswelos House. It was the Roxbury Y. Oswelos House means all sisters with a lot of soul. That was when I was just starting in my career. But Latoya, as you said, I've been at this for a long time, but last year was probably one of the hardest years in my career, both as a broadcaster and personally. Because as you said, when that incident happened with George Floyd, from 9 to 5, I was Karen Holmes Ward, WCVB TV person. But the rest of the hour, a mother, I have a dad, Black men in my life, my son, who I could just see in those circumstances. And then Betty said, worrying about her husband going out of the house, Liz and Latoya, the Black men in your family, Altaf, the men in your family. So it wears on, it was wearing on me probably more than I really was ready to admit. I think that Latoya, we probably all held it in because we were required professionally to do that. But there were many evenings when I got home from work and I just sat at the kitchen counter and would turn on the TV and just see a speck of a news video that I had buried in the back of my head during the day. And then it played again, and all of a sudden, all of these emotions were released. And then, as you said, Latoya, combine that with wanting to be a professional during the day, being suddenly deluged and inundated with requests from well-meaning colleagues who are trying to find answers and who want to do the right thing, and who, through this news coverage of George Floyd and the demonstrations that followed, were suddenly woke, which is a word that we have used all too much this past year. But okay, that's fine. I am on the management team at Channel 5. I also had the opportunity over this past year to weigh in on how we could things change with our Hearst Corporation. I called the president of Hearst Television far too many times.
Yes.
Far too many emails. but he was gracious, and he heard what I was trying to say. So all that to say, while we're trying to manage personally through this, all women also are trying to manage professionally and use our power and our voice and our words and our emotion to make sure that we change things, not just for women in the future, but for people in the future. And this has been a really tough and pivotal year to try to hold all that together.
I love it. And I just have to say, I love you. You know, so there is no competition at all. When we see each other, it's all love. It's like, right. Get over here, you little yummy thing, you. So there's so many women watching right now. And I was lucky enough to be at table one and hearing them connect. And they said they want to definitely keep platforms like Remo so we can get together and just sort of be together. I think people, and I maybe it's because I'm selfish, I want to get, again, these nuggets from you. Here's a question I love that I was given to ask you. And I want each person to answer it. And Deb, we'll start with you. How have you built strength and resiliency throughout your career? And you can just keep one example, just so we can keep it moving.
Say yes to tough projects. Take the risks that no one else will take sometimes. I've had a number of mentors teach me this, and then take the learnings from it. So make sure you know whether you thrived in that project or failed in that project, that you understand why you thrived or why you failed. Repeat it and bring other women along to have share those learnings with each other. We're not alone in this. I mean, the sisterhood that you all just talked about, that is the power of this. And women aren't great at that. Let's just know that. They're terrible. Right? So we take the learning, but share it and bring other people along with us.
Wow. All right. Dr. Saadi, how have you built strength and resiliency throughout your career?
You know, I think a big part of it has been trying to shift the focus from myself to community. And to elaborate on that, I think I sort of, with other folks or with my patients or other people in my lives, I feel like I understand that there are circumstances in their environment, in their community, that affect why, you know, certain things happen in their lives. And I think I don't give that same generosity to myself. And I think that's been a big part of my growth, is when something maybe doesn't turn out the way that I wanted to, of sort of not thinking just about myself, but really thinking about me as part of a larger community, and who do I need to tap in terms of getting more resources? Where were potential systemic failures that I sort of need to try to counter? And so part of it has just been that shift of really trying to see myself as part of a community and not just being focused on myself, which is very different than I think a lot of, in being in academic medicine. And it's always very focused on yourself and how do you get ahead. And so for me, it's always keeping the community and other folks in central.
It's so fun that you say you're just learning to be vulnerable, because you're open to just, opening, you're laying bare. You're like, well, you know what I used to think about me? And I mean, I think you're super vulnerable right now. Thank you for that. Liz, you have to tell you, my brother knows you, and everybody says, oh, and your reputation is, she is so tough. She is so resilient. And it's interesting that people view you as that. I don't know if you view yourself that way. How have you built this strength and resiliency and this reputation?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm not as tough as people think. I'm over here trying to manage my mascara at the moment. I want to say hope, heart, and hustle. And, I don't feel I've ever been given the choice whether I wanted to be resilient or not. I grew up in the Dudley Triangle here in Roxbury. There are 2 movies and a book about what this community did to survive, to fight everybody, to get eminent domain power over its land and rebuild itself. And I think that growing up in that environment, it's the survival of the fittest. And so what I've learned is that when you're not given a choice, for example, I entered politics 6 months after my brother's homicide. And I thought about in the ways in which I had contributed to society, and I'd helped young people as a youth worker and an executive director, and still I wasn't able to save my own brother. And it was a catalyst, and thank you so much, all of you, for sharing about fears and grief and vulnerability, because in those trials or the moments that I feel like when I ran for office, wanting more and better. And so when I think about protecting other people's families to ensure that they have what they need, if they're ever faced with what my family was faced with, it's that, resiliency is applauded, but for many people who are living in communities like mine, we're tired. We're tired of people seeing grit as something cool, because really what that is generational trauma. It is poverty. It is this idea of that if you don't claw your way out or kick that concrete ceiling or glass ceiling, you're never going to get where you want to be. And so I say hope, heart, and hustle, but with that, it's because I haven't had a choice. And I would love to create a world or a commonwealth where little girls like me know that they have a choice, that they have opportunity, that they can be given, like Deb said, the grace and the opportunity to fail and still succeed and take care of themselves and their families. So that's how I describe the strength that I've had to show. I don't know where it comes from, divine presence. The homie upstairs has been good to me, but I think that all of us have a different story.
The homie upstairs, I love that. Wow, and I'm just looking
at
the
home girl. Let me stand corrected. The home girl.
The sister upstairs, I got it. All right. Oh, goodness. And so many people responding to what you guys are saying. Betty, I want to bring you into this because you walk with such power. And I have to, we've never personally talked, but I know all about you. And in such a good way, just seeing your work and what your husband contributes as well. And the fact that you have 2 daughters, is that correct? And, and you're such a role model to them. You're a role model to so many young and old women, I'll say as well. How do you maintain the strength and the resiliency through your career and just be an example and being, I don't know if you realize this, but you seem so fearless in taking on topics that are not beautiful, are not pretty. When you talk about income equality, when you talk about low-income women, those are not sexy topics. People say they want to give, but in my opinion, it's mostly lip service. So how do you walk that line and can say it with a straight face and say, and yes, please, what is your part?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So for me, failing wasn't an option, right? So I grew up in New York City with a single mother. My mother's Puerto Rican, my father's Chinese. And we grew up both, in the projects in New York and in Puerto Rico. And my mother suffered from depression and anxiety all her life. So I often had to be that adult, right? That was caring for myself because she couldn't do it always, but caring for her, caring for my brother. And we don't talk about this issue enough, the mental health, issues in our community, especially in the Latino community where there's shame to talk about it. But I have many, many memories of, trying to understand and blaming her, right? Saying, why aren't you strong? Why can't you get over the depression? Why are you like this? And that made me internalize it, right? So I felt like I always had to be strong. I could never show emotion. I had to just plow forward. And the one thing she taught me about resiliency is she kept saying the way you're going to get out is through education. Focus on your education, focus on going to college, make me proud, because she had a scholarship to go to the University of Puerto Rico. And she went the first year, and that's when she started to get the panic attacks. And nobody knew what that was back then. They would send her to the Santeros to get, cleansed, because they didn't understand that this was depression. This was anxiety. It happens, right? So I think growing up in this household where, I had to be the strong one, made me very hard. I want to say, I feel like, I'm gritty, I'm hard, I just get things done. But it also made me feel like I lacked empathy, right? And so last year, I got to be honest, like this whole thing about, crying, being vulnerable, doing it at board meetings. I mean, I've never done that in my life. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. I finally have emotion. I finally can show it because I've been given the space and the opportunity to do it, and so what I think is so sexy about women of color, poor women, is that we are so resilient. We are gritty. We know how to, use every means that we have, right, to survive. And, and I do things, my brother and I were just talking the other day about my mom, how, she would cut out every coupon. She would, figure out how to find every piece of savings so that she can help my brother and I just get to where we are. And she did that, right? Never holding a full-time job because she couldn't. So I get a lot of that strength and grit from her, watching her and watching other women just like her, right? That make it through day by day, with any means that they have. And that to me is beautiful. That to me, we don't need all these lessons around, I mean, we do sometimes about financial literacy and how to budget and how to save. Like, I learned all that from my mother. I didn't need a class for that. But what I needed was access to opportunity, right? And that's what college gave me. That's what a higher education gave me. And that's why I focus so much on giving that back to others. So I live, I say I live my life and I live every day as if it were my last, because I need to open a door for somebody every day. I need, whether it's someone looking for a job, someone needs help with their business, someone just needs advice, they're having a bad day. Like, I feel like I have to give back in some way because somebody gave that to me. And that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps the work fresh, right? Because this is tiring. It's exhausting. But I see, when I see the great outcomes, the positive impact that even just opening one door can making that connection, I get strength from that as well.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. You're literally feeding my soul. Live life as is my last day. I mean, that's like my new theme. I'm about to tattoo that on my wrist. Thank you so much. I need that. Karen, we got to have you give the gem as well about building strength and resiliency throughout your career. Let's just be honest. Women don't get a chance to, usually it's 21 or let's say make it to 30 and you're on air and that's about it. Somehow, I know how, but people say, well, how is she's not only on air still, but she's also in management and a woman of color. That's not by chance. And you do it and you're so smooth with it. And you have this quiet power about you, but don't cross you. So I want you to talk about your secrets to strength and resiliency.
Well, Latoya, thank you. Sometimes I wake up and go to work and I wonder how I've done it too, how I survived. I've listened to all the women talk about how they make it through it. And for me, I think all of us have developed a shell of resilience around us. In our world, in our professions, you have to be strong. You have to believe in yourself. You have to not let other people define you, because there are always people that are trying to keep you back, prevent you from moving forward, jealous because you're more excellent than they are. So, I think I developed this shell of not listening to no, assuming that people who were trying to hold me back were haters, and also combined with that, and particularly in our jobs, Latoya, where so much of how people try to define us is ego-based, is you can't play into that. You have to have a balance outside of the boardroom, outside of your conference room, outside of that studio, so that you can go somewhere else and be yourself and recharge your battery, and exercise your power in another way. Everybody talked about doing stuff in the community, because and I do that as well. You don't
just do that. You live in the community. How many things do you host a year? Your show is all about it. I mean, come on, Karen. Let's give you some credit here.
All right, but that allows me to renew myself and get energy and define myself in a different way, which for me helps me stay strong for those other moments when things get really bad. And there are those moments.
I'm sure there are. We have so many different things, but gosh, I guess I want to get to, as we start to wind down, and so many people are responding, I just want to let you know that if you're listening right now and you were enjoying this is just a taste of what the YW Boston does all year long. So if you can get a chance to give a little something extra, even if you've given already or you haven't given yet, please do. And then take a screenshot of this panel discussion right now and tweet it out and let people know about the Academy of Women Achievers celebration right now. I mean, as we have the most amazing panel and awardees this year, we always do, but I'm enjoying this discussion. But let folks on Twitter know, on social media, Facebook, know about it, and then please give to the organization. Again, the goal, $26,000. We're halfway there. We're hearing from the organizer. I just have to put that little plug in right now because this is a fundraiser for the great mission of the YW Boston. Okay, back to the conversation right now. What strategies have you implemented or experienced that work well to promote inclusion in the workplace? Meaning, and inclusion could be, again, I know, Betty, you talked about helping, and Deb, you talked about helping get other people in the room. People sometimes, I know, especially in TV, you can be selfish. I'm here, I've made it, so that's me, I'm in. I'm not going to help the next one because that may threaten me. So, Deb, I see you shaking your head. So we'll let you answer that first. What strategies have you personally implemented, or would you like to see implemented to open up inclusion? Because for some reason we do all this work, but it still feels like a boys' club sometimes.
It's absolutely a boys' club. I mean, so, I live in a space of power. We misunderstand what power is sometimes, and giving it away is how we get it back, at least in a sisterhood, right? So if we are bringing people along, I try all the time to push women around me. There's a difference between mentorship and being a champion. And I believe in being a champion, right? So bring women along, put them, have them on the stage with you, have them present in the boardroom with you, have them at the executive meeting, give them the speaking role, push them out of their comfort zones. This is my colleagues. And all of a sudden they're fighting me. I do this with my team. They're fighting me all the time because they feel as if I'm supporting them, but I'm also pushing. And I think building those skill sets and resilience, whether we like that term or not, and ability to stand and speak in front of any space, use your voice and knock down the loud voices around you that just made the same point you did 5 minutes before or 2 minutes before. So I really believe in this whole idea of bringing people along and giving away the power to get it back.
Wow, that's intriguing. Liz, what strategies have you implemented or experienced that work well to promote inclusion in the workplace? What would you like to see? What's your thought?
So it's interesting. I work in government, and here the Massachusetts legislature, I'm one of only 4 Black women out of 200 senators and representatives. I'm one of only 14 Black and Latino women to have ever served in this body in 385 plus years. 385 plus years in one of the most liberal states in the country. And what's been frustrating to me is that you want to create inclusion, but the decision makers are not inclusive. And so one of the things that I've worked is, if you're going to make organizational, cultural decisions, you have to not only have those people at the table, but the support necessary for them to do what I actually believe is the most important thing, which is tell the truth. The reason why I said I'm one of 4 and said one of 14 is because I often feel like they don't hear or see the experience of Black and Latino or Latinx government officials. State legislatures across the country are still the most white male-dominated spaces, where Black women, only 4.8% of state legislatures across this country. And so the first strategy is change the makeup of who's making the decision, allow them to be able to make the true statements that they need to do. And then it's really hard when Deb was talking about power, really at the root of these situations is that we talk about implicit bias, for example. But really the problem isn't the implicit bias, it's the explicit bias. It's the generational, systemic, structural, racist, and sexist environments that we are breaking into finally.
Yeah.
But the point is, when we break into those environments, if we're speaking our truths and the people who can make the decisions are still not changing, things don't change as quickly as we like them to. So those are two strategies that I've used here in Massachusetts House of Representatives, and they messed up. They made me a vice chair of employee engagement. And so I don't know if that's a good thing, but that's part of the pathways and pipelines that I hope to create now, so that 4 can be 8 and 8 can be 12 soon enough.
It wasn't messed up. It was meant to be as divine, right? I love that. Altaf, same question for you. What strategies have you implemented or experienced that work well to promote inclusion in the workplace? What do you want to see? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Deb Taft's comment about really sponsoring women and giving opportunities. I can't thank my own mentors enough for being those people who will say, look, I already have these speaking engagements. I'm going to recommend Altaf to speak. And Deb, as you were talking, it reminded me of this beautiful proverb that says, a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. And I really think, just as you were talking, was thinking about that and thinking about how we can embody that in our work. I think the other piece that I've tried to do in my department and sort of the different positions is really trying to add metrics and sort of measure like diversity inclusion goals, so that it's not something that's as abstract or but really something that we have to achieve and work towards. So I think about, in the positions that I've been, when we're looking at, we're inviting speakers for our residents, or we're inviting speakers for grand rounds, like, let's look at the numbers. If are we, I just thinking about, we moved from having 12% of some of our residency speakers being women, just from measuring it, to the next year being at 45 or 50%, right? So really having, where are we at? What is our goals? And then moving that, right? We don't want to then just get to X and say, now we're done, right? If we're setting goals, we're always trying to get better. So then we sort of move to the next stage. So I would just add that to addition is really thinking about metrics and sort of measuring diversity and inclusion beyond sort of the theoretical appreciation of it.
Oh, I love that. Betty, what strategies you've talked about a little bit about it, and that's your focus, but what strategies have you implemented, or that you just want to see, or that you've experienced that you think would truly promote inclusion in the workplace?
Yeah, so similar to what others have said, one is you have to have a strategy. This has to be a strategic priority in your organization, and it has to come from the top, right? It has to come from the boards of organizations. It has to be embedded in within the executive team and senior ranks, as far as making, DE&I, whether you call it a strategy, initiative, et cetera, but it has to be baked into your DNA, your mission, your business planning, your operational planning, right? Just as you would do the same if you were, starting a new line of business, right? Or going into a new market. You have to create a plan. You've got to set goals. You have to have metrics. You have to keep measuring, and you have to set up, the decision making so that it truly includes the voices of everyone that you want represented in your organization, right? So I do believe, our organization should be reflective of our larger community, right? Women represent a majority of our residents. So why don't our workplaces look like that? So I think that, there's many strategies, and we all know what they are. They've been named here already. I do think the intention has to be there, right? Yes. So without intentionality, without saying we're going to do this as a company, as a nonprofit, as a philanthropic arm, whatever it is, if we're not focusing on that for the next 10 years, and it's an ongoing journey, right? It's going to keep evolving. But what I want to see is women feeling like they have opportunities to advance in their organizations, that they're being heard,
Yes.
that the issues that they're facing, whether at home or at work, are being addressed by their employers, that they have somebody to go to, and that they can use both, the networks that they have in their workplaces, but externally as well, as places to build resilience and support, right? And we see workplaces becoming more of that. Last year, because many were remote, we saw our colleagues at work become our supports, right? And that should continue, right? So whether there's, affinity groups that get created or enhanced because of the environment we're in, those were the places that raised up the issues and said, we want to change this policy, or we want to change this practice. And then things started to actually change. But I would say let's not take sort of this movement that's been started this last year and now as this thing that's it's beginning to wane a little bit, right? But to say we're going to create a very different and different workplaces, and I'm all for not always thinking we have to change what exists, but let's start our own, right? Where women are starting businesses are at incredible paces. Women of color in particular, Latinas, right, are starting businesses at the fastest pace. Let's create the organizations that we want to see. So let's not discount that. Let's support that too.
I love it. Okay, Karen, you and I are going to start the new TV network here in Boston. Let's do it.
Let's do it, girl. Let's do it.
We'll let you be the last word on this. Just what you've experienced, what you want to promote inclusion in the workplace.
Well, I come back to what is called the business case for diversity. So with my management hat on, I'm always preaching, as many of you around this virtual table are. More than one study has shown that workplaces that are more diverse, culturally, ethnically, religious, and gender are more profitable. And so in today's world, when businesses want to succeed, they have to adopt the business case for diversity. Certainly, LaToya, in our field of broadcasting over this past year, both of our stations needed to have diverse people on the air to be able to tell the story properly.
Yes.
And to be able to advise the assignment desk on, what to say, what not to say. Here's a tip that you can follow. No, don't follow that tip. So just in this last year in the broadcast industry, we've seen how a diverse workforce has helped our organizations succeed. So, that's on the managing up tip, promoting that business case for diversity. For me personally, I'm very proud of an internship program that we've had at CityLine for, as long as I can remember, certainly since I've been there. And what we have done is give college students an opportunity to produce a half-hour show. They leave the station with a production credit. They get a chance to succeed or fail while they're an intern and go out into the world. And we've had great success. One of our interns is a showrunner at Netflix. Another is a producer at ABC News. We have two network producers. One, I'm sure you've all seen, Aixa Diaz, who used to be a CityLine intern, and the list goes on and on and on. So I personally am most proud of that opportunity to give young kids of color an opportunity to crack the door, to get the skills, to understand that they can do the work and go out and get a job and be successful.
I love it. That was perfect. So I'm winding down. We still have some work to do, and if you have not given, I encourage you to give right now and to tweet about this. But I just want to say, Deb, Liz, Altaf, Betty, Karen, my sisters, when I see you on the street, you're getting hugged. I don't care. I'm fully vaxxed. I'm coming straight for you. Okay.
You are hugged all the time.
Yes, we do. When you see a 6-footer coming your way, don't be afraid. It's with love, and I'll turn my face so we won't have any problems. Okay. This has been really, truly fed my soul. I can see from the response, everybody watching has really benefited from it. It was perfect. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for helping. You don't know what you said. I look at my note. This is all from you guys. Literally, I'm like, okay, I have my mantra for tomorrow morning when I wake up at 1:30 in the morning. I'm like, I'm tired. Nope. I know that I have to do A, B, and C. So thank you for this so much. And thank you to the YW Boston again. You truly are, you belong in this coveted Academy of Women Achievers. You are an inspiration. I'm not being, flowery with my language. It's the absolute truth. Thank you for your time. We love you. I'm just representing what the chat is saying right now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Continue, please, to do what you do. And for a shout out to myself, if you want to wake up in the morning 4 to 7, watch our newscast. I'll be there every in Boston. Then watch Karen as well on her shows as well. But I have a co-anchor who's a woman, and my station has decided that they see the value in people like you and me. And so that's my focus. If you want to see a hand in what conversations like this look like, watch us in the morning. I'll be up, unfortunately or fortunately. Okay. All right. So Beth Chandler, I'm going to turn it back over to you in the discussion right now. Let us know what we're doing with fundraising. Sending you all my love, our awardees. Thank you so much.
LaToya, thank you so much for moderating that panel. Just the energy that you bring. I mean, how many people can say to Karen Holmes that she's a little yummy thing? Not too many people can get away with that. And I hope next year we are in person so I can get my hug, but thank you so much. You were fabulous. And I'm a church going person, and I felt how you moderated that panel and everything that was shared that I was in church. So I thank the panelists for everything they said and how you were able to bring that out. And one thing that really struck me by everything that went through, and there were so many notes that I was taking myself, but one thing that really resonated with me was the talk around vulnerability. And I think for many of us, it's been ingrained in us that is a sign of weakness. And I think the fact that you shed light on that today, that you were vulnerable, that actually sheds light to allow us to show our strength. And so I thank you, panelists, for demonstrating that and for showing your strength, and LaToya, you as well. So thank you. So now I'm going to do the award presentation. So first, Betty Francisco. So Betty is a seasoned business executive, board director, investor, and community leader. She has over 22 years of experience advising high-growth startups, nonprofits, life sciences, technology, and health and wellness companies in the areas of legal compliance, risk management, operations, and human resources. She is also a co-founder of Amplify Latinx and serves on many, many boards. A few years ago, Betty said that she realized she wanted her career to sit at the intersection of helping underserved people and communities to build wealth while also tackling the systems of racism and inequality that have created barriers to economic opportunity. Betty joined Compass Working Capital in 2018 as their general counsel, helping working families build assets and financial security while also making asset building the norm and not the exception in our nation's anti-poverty programs. Now, as the CEO of Boston Impact Initiative, she will oversee an impact investing fund that is working to close the racial wealth divide in Eastern Massachusetts. Betty, for your extraordinary work as an advocate and champion for our communities of color, for underserved families, and for small businesses, we are thrilled to present you with a 2021 Academy of Women Achievers Award. Next, many of you will certainly have recognized our next awardee, Karen Holmes Ward. Karen has been working in broadcasting for over 40 years. Karen is Cityline host and executive producer and director of public affairs and community services at WCVB Channel 5. If you haven't watched Cityline, you should check it out. Cityline is WCBV's award-winning weekly magazine program, which addresses the accomplishments, concerns, and issues facing people of color in the Commonwealth. A few notable guests include Oscar winners Regina King, Lupita Nyong'o, Forrest Whitaker, Denzel Washington, Louis Gossett Jr., and Spike Lee. Karen also oversees WCVB's public service and community outreach efforts and has served as executive producer for Return to Glory, a 1-hour primetime documentary about the famed Massachusetts 54th Regiment that was syndicated nationally and seen in over 80% of the country. In an interview for YW Boston's newsletter, The Leader, Karen said, while none of us can solve the whole problem, if each of us makes an effort individually or within our places of business to use our access to change lives, maybe collectively we can all move Greater Boston toward a more equitable society. Words to live by. Karen, I'm very pleased to welcome you into the Academy of Women Achievers. Our next awardee, Representative Liz Miranda, was inspired to run for office due to the death of her brother Michael by gun violence. Liz was elected in 2018 as the state representative for the 5th Suffolk District, representing Roxbury and Dorchester. In her first term, Representative Miranda filed and passed legislation to reform policing to save Black lives. She worked to improve racial disparities in maternal health, promoted environmental justice within disproportionately impacted communities, and continues her work to ensure a just recovery for micro to small businesses most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Liz was the first legislator in the Commonwealth to establish a district-led community care program that assisted over 3,000 vulnerable residents in Roxbury and Dorchester with food security, housing assistance, unemployment assistance, and access to COVID-19 testing. Liz has served as a nonprofit leader and community organizer. Again, with a resume too extensive to continue to go over, what you most need to know about Liz is her sentiment about advancing diversity, equity, inclusion. Quote, moving forward, we must dispel the notion of rugged individuality, restore a sense of community and collective responsibility, and not be afraid to invest in people. No truer words, Liz. Thank you so much, Representative Miranda, and I am thrilled to welcome you into the YW Boston Academy of Women Achievers. Deb Taft is our next awardee, and she's a longtime respected leader in the nonprofit sector and supporter of YW Boston. Deb is CEO and co-owner of Lindauer, a global search and talent firm serving nonprofits in the education, health, science, arts and culture, policy, advocacy, and civic and social justice arenas. Deb's professional, civic, and social justice leadership has created lasting impacts in the education, healthcare, civil rights, and youth services arenas, including serving as Chief Development Officer and Interim Chief Strategy Officer for Girl Scouts of the USA in New York. Representing girls in 112 US councils in 94 countries, Deb played a critical role in transforming organizational talent, culture, and social impact. Deb is also one of the founding team members of City Year, which today has youth service teams in more than 31 regions across the United States, the United Kingdom, and South Africa. And she serves on the board of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation in Washington, D.C., a role that includes serving as the lead volunteer for all of HRC's LGBTQ civil rights efforts throughout New England. A message Deb recently shared that is also a call to action is, quote, the job of white allies is to enable proximate leaders to lead, to keep working on our own biases, to see how they get in the way every day, and to use our voices and actions relentlessly for transformation. Greater Boston has often led societal change in the United States. Let's lead here again. Let's use these words to motivate us. Thank you, Deb, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the Academy of Women Achievers. And our last award is near and dear to many of us who knew my predecessor, the late Sylvia Farrell Jones. Sylvia passed away from cancer several years ago, and when she did, we knew that we needed to continue her great legacy by honoring aspiring young women of color in leadership. Dr. Altaf Saadi is our third recipient of this award. As instructor of neurology at Harvard Medical School, general academic neurologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, and associate director of the MGH Asylum Clinic, among other things. She uses her research to elevate community voice. Examples of her work include looking at neuropsychiatric health disparities for immigrant communities, including asylum seekers and refugees, and addressing inequities through community-partnered and policy-relevant scholarship and action. One of her projects focused on understanding how hospitals and healthcare facilities can ensure that all patients feel safe when accessing healthcare, regardless of their immigration status, by exploring the concept of sanctuary and safe spaces in the clinical setting. It is truly extraordinary, all that she has accomplished. Another one of her many accomplishments is that she leveraged her expertise as a neurologist to explain how police officers have used junk science to defend brutality against young Black and brown men. Sylvia would be so proud to see you receive this award. Thank you so much, and welcome into the Academy of Women Achievers. All righty, so we are winding down. And as I reflected on earlier and the awardees spoke about during the panel, gender equity is dependent on all of us working together to support women in the workplace and in leadership. There are a number of ways you can join YW Boston's work to increase equity and inclusion at the intersection of race and gender. First, you and your organization can support YW Boston's Parity on Board efforts. To do that, you can go on our website, on the parityonboard.org website, and learn about the legislation, which would require that all Massachusetts boards and commissions have at least no more than 50% plus one of any gender, as well as a minimum that the racial and ethnic composition of boards and commissions represent that of the state, and that there's a concerted effort to place women of color. There are over 7,000 seats on boards and commissions in Massachusetts, and they need to look like the Commonwealth. So please support us in that effort. You can also bring Inclusion Boston gender dialogues to your workplace. This program offers an intersectional approach to gender inclusion in the workplace. Participants get to reflect on their gender identity and how it interacts with their race and ethnicity, deepen their awareness of the construction of the gender binary, and create an action plan to bring greater equity within their workplace. So it'll be transparent for how you're going to make sure that you're treating everybody, and particularly women, equally and equitably in your workplace. Please be in touch with Shira Bornstein at Shira@YW Boston to learn more. And gender equity cannot solely be championed by women leaders. If you are a man in the audience wondering what role you can play or how you can develop the tools to be a more inclusive leader, consider applying for Lead Boston. Our cohort-based leadership program, Lead Boston, equips participants of all backgrounds with the knowledge and skills to be able to be more inclusive as leaders and to really lead and support and foster your teams. We are going to be posting the application soon, so please go on our website and you can register to get the application when it becomes open. And as for upcoming events, I want to share that we're going to do our first FIRE Symposium happening on Saturday, June 5th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that is going to be an opportunity for the young middle school girls who've participated in the FIRE program over the past year to connect with each other and to connect with others. So it's not just for young people. We want this to be intergenerational. So please register. There are ways for you to get involved in that program and to support and to lead table discussions. We'd love to have you join us. So go on our website. You can sign up for that event. It's free. We'd love to have you there. And now, as I mentioned during my opening remarks, we have a goal of raising $26,000 today from individuals. As of just a few minutes ago, we had raised $15,000. There is still time to donate before the end of the day. And since you're at home, just take out your credit card, sitting right there. You might as well do it now so you don't forget, right? You can go to our QR code at the bottom of the screen. You can also text to donate at 617-652-5008. And since you were home and you didn't have to go out to lunch, you can just think about, well, if I would have paid for lunch, I'll just give that to YW. Our prizes for social media engagement and first donation have already been determined, but there's still opportunity to enter into both of our raffle chances to win by the end of the day. Donors of 1,000 or more will be entered into a raffle for the book, The Conversation, and a YW face mask and stickers. And donors of 5,000 or more will get to have a chance to have dinner with me, and I'll let you pick the wine. So please make a donation by the end of the day. Encourage your friends, families, relatives to donate so we can continue to do this really wonderful work that we do. So once again, we appreciate your support. We thank our sponsors and particularly Eastern Bank for allowing us to use their facility. Thank you so much to the host committee and Bea and Ennis for being here with us. Thank you to the YW staff for all the work that they're doing behind the scenes. And again, thank you. I hope to see you at next year's 27th Annual Academy of Women Achievers. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.